The always truthful Wikipedia states, "The Great Galveston Hurricane, known regionally as the Great Storm of 1900, was the deadliest natural disaster in United States history and the fifth deadliest Atlantic hurricane overall. The hurricane left between 6,000 and 12,000 fatalities in the United States. Most of these deaths occurred in and near Galveston, Texas, after the storm surge inundated the coastline with 8 to 12 feet of water. In addition to the number killed, the storm destroyed about 7,000 buildings of all uses in Galveston, which included 3,636 demolished homes. Every dwelling in the city suffered some degree of damage. The hurricane left approximately 10,000 people in the city homeless out of a total population of fewer than 38,000. Remember that. The disaster ended the golden era of Galveston as the hurricane alarmed potential investors who turned to Houston instead. In response to the storm, 3 engineers designed and oversaw plans to raise the Gulf of Mexico shoreline of Galveston Island by 17 feet and erect a 10-mile seawall. So I've got to state that I have never been to Galveston. I have no stake in really how this true history actually pans out or anything. But I came across this in some video and someone mentioned it and I was like, I'm going to look into that. And then I kept looking into it and kept finding more and more things that just didn't really make sense, especially when you consider this to only be a population of starting to be boomed at around 38,000. It makes you wonder when you see some of the videos, which I'm going to show you, that how these people could have built these amazing and ridiculous buildings, but also recovered the way they did, and kind of been just, the story just doesn't seem to make sense to me. And again, I have no care either way. If this history on Wikipedia is dead accurate, then that's fine. But something seems a little off when you look at how immaculate the architecture in buildings on this place were in Galveston. And so this is one of the old videos from 1900, right after searching the ruins on Broadway for dead bodies. And so look at the building in the background. You can see some of the surviving footage, and just that building itself, like, what? A hurricane destroyed that kind of building? And you'll see a lot of this architecture resembles like stuff in Europe that's really old, stuff in the Americas that's really old, and all this other stuff. But this was only a booming, just starting to be boom town, 38,000 people. That building in back is huge. How could a hurricane, just wind and water, end up destroying that? Something is missing from the narrative. Something has been rewritten. And we know nowadays, especially when you think about events like January 6th and this year, and other events that are recently where something flat out happens and videos prove it, and then the media and the news totally change the story into something that is almost of no resemblance to what actually took place. So imagine that 120 years later, what they would do about events like this during a time with no internet, no, the ability to just completely control the story. And so I'm going to show you a bunch of these pictures, but look at this architecture. 38,000 people in this town, and that was some ancient stuff. This is, I think, just there's some artwork as well in here that depicted by people of this event, which is another telltale sign that something a little Ori went. This just doesn't make any sense. What was there, just a giant wave, but only in certain spots? Like, none of it makes sense. It looks as if the place was bombarded with bombs, with energy weapons. I have no idea. With something, just something totally different than a hurricane or a natural disaster. Especially look at these buildings. These buildings are going to get taken out by a hurricane, by wind. It doesn't really make sense. Those are some buildings that, in other places will live for thousands of years potentially. So whatever happened, whatever the people in charge did to this town in this area at this time, it was, I would be willing to believe that it was something intentional and something we're not really unsure of at this present moment. We're just not able to fathom. As far as a storm goes, it doesn't seem like the case. The same kind of situation happens like in San Francisco, where you have footage of the day before and then the day after a disaster. And it's like, oh, it's kind of interesting. And, what were you guys really doing? Imagine if they, could be doing really anything, tell the people to evacuate, tell certain people to evacuate. Whatever happened, I have no idea. I, again, don't have any stake in it, don't really care too much, but it just seems too fishy to believe. It's a great glimpse into the past, either way, in the year 1900, where this book takes a look at before and after. So the pictures you're seeing now are all before, and then pretty soon, in a couple minutes, it's going to be showing all the after images that have happened. And look at this. This is a well-established place. These buildings were, 38,000 people, they say, lived in this town. And it was blossoming. It was starting to blossom. Look at this. Those are archways. That is ancient. You'd find that anywhere, these things anywhere in the country or world, and they'd be well older than that. And how do you make these when you really, when they're cleaning up and looking for bodies, they're just using shovels. They're not using heavy machinery. They're not using anything. Using just manpower and probably animal power. And that is after they built all of this for 38,000 people. It doesn't really make sense to me. Maybe I'm missing something. I have no idea. But, it seems like these cities were inhabited. It seems like someone was here in America in all these cities, and they were rewritten. They were written out of history. Whoever is around now and in control did not like the people who did all this stuff before us. The people who set the foundations, made the highways, made the roads, designated all these things, designated plots, arranged cities in great grids in amazing, elaborate sections and zones near water, near natural resources that were amazing, near borders. Someone was here in America in a history that has been erased, and they were having a good time, and they did a lot of great stuff, and they were brilliant architects, and they were masterful people. And considering what has been replaced by what replaced all of it, it's doesn't seem as cool, to be honest. The houses that are being made now are nothing like these. These are houses that a lot of care went into them. They're works of art. They're masterpieces. They're designed to have an amazing time in, and to live in and experience in a great way, and be very, to be part of something that just they could be super rich people, but it seems like, I don't know, they seem like they're just part of another world in another time. Doesn't seem like it's part of the history that we've been taught in schools, that we've been found on Wikipedia or any of those things. Really glamorous, magical place. Incredible time period, and then something wiped it out. And whether it was a hurricane, that would be absolutely the most colossal thing in history by far. Would be must have been way more severe than anything we've ever even seen still in our times. And we've seen a lot of things like Katrina and whatnot with New Orleans, but this is just absolutely damage to the tops of buildings, damage to everything, damage to buildings that seemed like they would last, made of stone and that nowadays would survive hurricanes, and just they were absolutely decimated by the ones during this particular storm, of the biggest storm of all time or whatever. But to me, it looks like something blew this stuff up. The fact that certain strategic things are fallen and other things aren't. It's kind of like the wildfires in California, that trees are fine, but a whole house is gone and the trees around it are untouched by flame. It doesn't make any sense. Anomalies that just don't really make sense. And they were clearing all this with shovels and manpower. It must have taken forever. Look at this. What is that a sign of? Is that a sign of just a huge, just something? Did the firmament break above Galveston? Did a bomb get tested there? And they want to test out a new form of weapon. They do it on these new cities. Tell certain people to evacuate. Boom. Let's see. Let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can scare people in the future, and let's test it out in these random places with architecture that's not ours, and stuff we don't care about. We'll rebuild it. We'll get all the money from the people that rebuild it. We'll find all the builders. We'll be the builders. We'll repurpose the stuff, the materials, and we'll make it happen. But look at that church. What? Town of 38,000, and they built something ancient and Gothic. They built all this stuff, what? Where did they quarry it all? How did they get all the material? On an island, supposedly, Galveston? It doesn't make sense. It's worthy to question it. It doesn't really matter either way. It's in the past, but it does also matter because it's just more signs of the immense amounts of lies that our country is based on. You know, this doesn't look like a Wild West scenario. Doesn't look like a Civil War type of, after Civil War type of scenario. Doesn't look like much of anything that we've ever seen in a movie or something. It looks pretty magnificent, and then all of a sudden it was destroyed. It looks pretty ancient, and then all of a sudden it's destroyed. It looks like it has a total other purpose, and then it's gone. And everyone's just kind of there. So I hope you enjoy this collection of images, photographs, and jumbled thoughts on something I don't really know much about, but maybe you all do. Chime in if you've ever been to Galveston, or if you and your city have, around this time of 1900, been erased, like San Francisco, Boston, fires, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, all the natural disasters that took place right around this time, destroyed a lot of beautiful buildings and paved the way for people to get rich. Who knows? I sure don't, but it's fun thinking about. Bless you all. Have a great one.